a whole bunch of like different types of NBA careers, right? You know, you have your career superstars, your icons, you've got like, you know, your career role players, right? Your journeymen. But DeMar DeRozan, honestly, he's got one of the most unique careers I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, a very good player in his prime, all-star, all-NBA guy some years, but not a guy you'd think of as a possible top 10 scorer in NBA history.
Before we start talking about the career of DeMar DeRozan, if you haven't already, make sure this video like, give us a subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss out on one of our videos. But first, this video is presented by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 sportsbook app and is the best place to play daily fantasy sports. It's super simple. All you do is you pick a lineup of players and you simply select more or less on a couple of their stats to build a lineup. And right now, PrizePicks has a brand new offer where if you play just $5, you get $150 in lineups if you win your first lineup. This time I've got a quick hybrid soccer and WNBA lineup. First, we've got Kylian Mbappe, more than 1.5 shots on target against Real Sociedad. It'll be Mbappe's second game back after the World Cup, and he was just shooting for fun against Espanyol on Saturday. He didn't score, but he did have 6 shots. So I think he at least gets 1.5 on target this time. Then I've got Thibaut Courtois, less than 2.5 goalie saves. I just think the Madrid defense is going to do their part. He's not going to have much to do back there. And then, of course, the Oregon GOAT, Sabrina Ionescu, more than 2.5 3-pointers made. Always got to back my fellow Ducks, and I think she gets at least 3 3-pointers against Golden State. So if you like building daily fantasy lineups, head to PrizePicks and use the code HMA or the link in the description for $150 in lineups when you play just $5 and win. And only play if you're able to do so responsibly and have the means to do so. Once again, that's code HMA or use the link in the description. So like I alluded to in the intro, I think it could be argued that DeMar DeRozan has one of the most unique careers in NBA history. I mean, he's a guy he's always been a solid player, you know, made a couple of all-star teams, been the best player on some good but not quite championship level teams. Not exactly the type of guy who you'd think would have a genuine chance to finish as a top 10 scorer of all time, though.
I mean, I don't even know if he's like a top 10 scorer among this generation.
Yeah.
And he might be top 10 all time in points. I mean, there was that moment a few months ago, or maybe it's been longer than that at this point.
It's been 4 months.
4 months, okay, where him and Carson from Nerd Sesh got into it on Twitter, where Carson pointed out DeRozan only need to average 18 points per game for another 105 games to pass Shaq and become a top 10 scorer of all time. You know, Carson said he found that deeply disturbing, which I think he's just, you know,
playing it up for Twitter.
Yeah, he's just joking around,
Yeah.
the word I would have used.
Yeah,
you know.
I would go with surprising or interesting, unexpected. At most, I would say fascinating.
Right. Again, I don't think he was being serious, but DeRozan was not a fan of that comment.
It is honestly interesting, though. I mean, again, this is no offense to DeRozan, because to say he's not among like the 20 greatest players of all time, you know, that's not a huge knock or anything. But if you look at the list of the top 20 scorers, like, he's the name that stands out. Like him and Dan Issel.
Yeah.
And Issel only because he played like in the 70s in the ABA. Like they're the two, right? But DeRozan, like, it is so interesting that a guy that is definitively not on the level of a lot of the guys on that list is statistically gonna finish like among all those guys on that list, among like the Shaqs, right? And the Hakeems and Dirks, all these like guys you think of as like legends and like pillars of the game of all time. Like DeMar DeRozan is gonna finish among them, which is really, really interesting. So that all begs the question, like, how the has he done this?
We're gonna start this story in 2009 when the Raptors, they were in a difficult situation to say the least. I mean, they had rebounded in the mid 2000s after losing Vince Carter in 2004. That was done by drafting Chris Bosh and developing him into an all-star. Bosh led the Raptors to 47 wins and back to the playoffs in 2007, but they were upset by Carter and the Nets in the first round. Before that, you also miss out on a golden opportunity in 2006. You had the first overall pick and you took Andrea Bargnani instead of LaMarcus Aldridge.
Apparently Bosh wanted him to take Aldridge.
Yeah, kind of interesting because they basically play the exact same position, like power forwards that can play the center, but yeah, that would have been a stacked front line.
Maybe they were thinking Bargnani can shoot the three better.
I guess, yeah.
But Bosh and LaMarcus down low?
That would have been dominant.
The mid-range jump shots, just over and over, they've been raining them in. And yeah, over the next 2 seasons after 2007, basically everything just went downhill. Like, they made the playoffs playoffs again in 2008, but they regressed down to 41 wins in the 6th seed. And despite trading for All-Star center Jermaine O'Neal in the 2008 offseason, they regressed again to 33-49 in the 08-09 season. O'Neal was actually traded at the deadline in 2009 for Sean Marion, and that terrible season set them up with the 9th pick in the 2009 draft, all while Bosh only had 1 season left on his deal, and the threat of the Raptors losing another franchise player was a very real possibility. And with the 9th overall pick, the Raptors selected DeMar DeRozan out of USC. DeRozan was a 5-star recruit who had played 1 solid season at SC, including leading the Trojans to a surprise Pac-12 tournament championship before going down in the second round of the NCAA tournament to a Michigan State team that finished as national runners-up. Fun fact though, this SC team had Taj Gibson and Nikola Vucevic on it, and they only won 18 regular season games.
That's crazy. I never understood how USC wasn't better in basketball. Maybe just being a West Coast boy, seeing them in football.
It is weird, yeah.
It was weird, but they always had like solid NBA players. OJ Mayo, I remember like around this time.
It's always weird looking back at some college teams that have just a bunch of NBA guys on it. And you're like, how did they, like the Rutgers team with Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper.
Right, yeah.
Like, they went under 500.
Yeah,
how does that happen?
But back to DeRozan, when he came to the league, he was seen as a freak athlete, but also a very raw prospect. He essentially was a project, a player who had all the physical tools as well as a solid mid-range game, but had a shaky handle, not a great passer, and a limited ability to hit a jump shot beyond 17 feet. After a guy viewed as a prospect, when you have a star that could be bolting in a year in free agency, now it was essentially the best player they could have taken. You could have got Drew Holiday, but pretty good pick overall, so no hate on the draft pick. The Raptors did improve in 2010, though. They basically flipped the entire roster, added guys like Jared Jack and Hedo Turkoglu, and they were hovering around the 4 seed midway through the season, but they fell apart after the All-Star break and eventually missed the playoffs by 1 game. DeRozan had a decent rookie season, though. He played 77 games, started 65 of them, and averaged 8.5 points. He also competed in the slam dunk contest and All-Star weekend, just barely losing in the final round against Nate Robinson. And DeRozan's opportunities were about to get a whole lot more plentiful as that summer in 2010, Chris Bosh departed to Miami to join Dwayne Wade and LeBron James on the Heat. DeRozan still wasn't quite the first option. That was still Bargnani, but
that's a miserable existence right there.
Yeah, but 82 games he played the following season, upped his scoring to over 17 points per game. I mean, the Raptors only won 22 games, so
that's what Bargnani is your first option to get you.
A terrible season as a whole, but for DeRozan as an individual to up your scoring by double,
pretty much,
yeah, pretty good development.
Also, he competed in the slam dunk contest again as an injury replacement for Brandon Jennings.
That makes no sense. Especially because this was around the era where good dunkers actually competed in the dunk contest.
For the most part, yeah. And like, I know Brandon Jennings, when he was a rookie, he threw down like a couple like fast break, like lefty dunks. Yeah, but dunk contests, really? I don't think he quite had hops like that.
Maybe we're just not remembering. Maybe. He was like that. Need to watch the tape back.
Young Brandon Jennings, maybe. 2011-12 was mostly the same for DeRozan and the Raptors. He averaged around, 16 points per game. The Raptors were still terrible. He was still second option on the team. 2012-13, though, big year of changes for the Raptors. They traded for Kyle Lowry in the 2012 offseason, also traded for Rudy Gay in January of 2013. Despite those additions, the Raptors were still not very good, and DeRozan was again playing second fiddle offensively, this time to Gay. Although he did have a pretty insane game winner against Orlando, so, that was at least one nice highlight for him. But again, this is his 3rd season in a row averaging between 16 to 18 points per game. So you kind of had to wonder, is that kind of what he's going to max out as? He was around 23, 24 at the time. Most guys in the NBA are kind of at their max around 23, 24. They kind of get there and they stay there until they're 28, 29, 30 before they start going downhill. I feel like it's pretty rare that a guy gets to 25, 26, 27 and then takes a big leap, right? I know Steph did it.
Yeah, I always bring up Steph, but he's the rare exception.
He's the exception, yeah. Most guys around 24, that's pretty close to what they're going to be, right? Raptors finished with a record of 34-48, missed the playoffs again, although they did lock up DeRozan to a 4-year, $38 million extension, but it was the 2013-14 season where everything changed for both DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry. Raptors again started poorly, went 6-12 after 18 games. This is when they decided to trade Rudy Gay to Sacramento, and it was at this point apparently that DeRozan approached Lowry and the two decided that they needed to take ownership of this team, lest one or both of them potentially being shipped out of town. Lowry's name was actually mentioned in trade talks around this time, mostly with the Knicks, and And even though they had just locked up DeRozan to a new extension, like his development had kind of stagnated over the past couple seasons. Like he has basically been the same guy for 3 years in a row. And with the Raptors seemingly going nowhere, they just traded their leading scorer. Like the prospect of a full-blown teardown and rebuild was maybe not likely, but it was at least on the table. Instead, Lowry and especially DeRozan both had career years.
Yeah, Lowry upped his scoring to nearly 18 points a night, averaged 7.5 assists, and DeRozan upped his scoring to nearly 23 points a night, which was good enough for him to make his first All-Star team. And also, you know, throwback to the garbage Eastern Conference. This team was 16-17 in early January, and they were the 4th seed.
That's bullshit. I'm sorry. Like, thank God the East is good now.
Exactly.
But man, in the 20s, we're beating a dead horse because we mention this all the time in any video that takes place in like the 2010s or whatnot. The 2010s Eastern Conference was dog ass.
What was even crazier is they went 32-17 the rest of the season, had a fantastic end of the season, finished with 48 wins. That's the best record in franchise history, and you still are the 4th seed.
You know what? Maybe the East wasn't as ass as we think it was.
Yeah, I guess not. I mean,
early in the 2013-14 season, I guess the East was just god awful, and then everyone figured their shit out around like late January.
Yeah, I mean, weirdly enough, we just made the video on the Nets. That's exactly what they did as well.
Exactly.
And that's the team they matched up with in the first round. DeRozan and Lowry did struggle in that series as the Raptors went down in 7 games. Of course, Lowry in the final game, game 7, gets his shit swatted by Paul Pierce.
Truly a fate worse than death.
Right, to end things. But you got back in the playoffs. Looked like they had 2 solid pieces to build around moving forward. And 2014-15 was a step forward, but also kind of a step backward as well.
This is a weird year for them, honestly.
Yeah, you trade for Lou Williams, who won 6th Man of the Year, so great pickup there.
That's positive.
Yeah, DeRozan and Lowry had 2 more solid seasons, Lowry making his first All-Star team. You started 24-8, which was fantastic, but you only won 49 games overall. 2nd straight year breaking your franchise record, though, for most wins in a season. Again, you get the 4th seed, but they were the 1st seed in the East basically up until New Year's, before slipping behind Atlanta, who had that fantastic season. You held the 2nd seed until March before they slipped behind Cleveland and Chicago. So yeah, you start 24-8, everything's going great, but you went 500 the rest of the way. And in the playoffs, you got swept in the first round by John Wall and Bradley Beal, that Wizards team, which again, you're getting swept when you have home court advantage. We've seen it with our own eyes. It's one of the most painful things you can see as an NBA fan.
It's not fun, man. It sucks. So yeah, I mean, great first half, not even first half, like first third of the season, honestly. That 24-8 start, you're looking like one of the best teams in the conference. You got the 1st seed. And then the second half of the year, I don't really know what happened. Like maybe they just regress back to the mean, regress back to what they are. But yeah, I mean, you technically take a step forward. You win 1 more game in the regular season. You set a new franchise record for most wins in a season, 49, and you get fucking smacked in the playoffs. Like, I don't know. It's a weird season to quantify for them. And again, kind of another turning point for DeRozan and the Raptors. I mean, his contract was up at the end of the next season. And while the Raptors, they had progressed to a team that makes the playoffs, they had also very much stagnated in the playoffs. I mean, hell, they went from going 7 in the first round to getting swept. So, you know, we're not exactly making progress here. But for DeRozan and the Raptors, 2015-16 was the high point of his time in Toronto. They set a new franchise record for wins in a season. They won 56 games. DeRozan and Lowry both averaged career highs in points per game, both made the All-Star team, with Lowry also making All-NBA 3rd team, as well as picking up some votes for Defensive Player of the Year and even MVP. He finished 10th in MVP voting, which is really impressive. Also, this was DeRozan's 3rd straight season of averaging 20 plus, and while I don't think anyone viewed him as like, you know, a superstar, he had at least established himself as like, you know, a star, like, you know, borderline All-Star in and around that range, you know?
Yeah, they finished at the 2nd seed in the East, only 1 game behind LeBron in the Cavaliers. They were pushed to 7 in the first round by Paul George and the Pacers, before again going to 7 with Dwayne Wade and the Heat in the 2nd round. I know you've mentioned this multiple times, that wanted to see the Heat win that series because you wanted to see LeBron go up against Dwayne Wade, return to South Beach. It would have been cinema.
This was the best chance we would have gotten. So you know what? The fact that the Raptors denied me this, I'll always hate them like 1.5%.
Fair enough.
You denied me a chance to see LeBron and Wade go up against each other in the playoffs. God damn, I wanted that.
So the Raptors were pushed to 7 by Miami, but ultimately blew them out to advance to the conference conference finals. First conference finals in franchise history. You're matching up with LeBron and the Cavaliers. First and not the last time that would happen. And not to spoil everything, but I'm sure you guys fucking know how these matchups went against the Cavs.
LeBron and the Cavs were quite cruel to DeMar and the Raptors.
Yeah. DeRozan this year actually had a pretty good conference finals. Really, the only outright terrible game he had was game 5. And the Raptors did manage to take 2 games off the Cavs. But also, the 4 games you did lose in this series was by an average of 28.5 points. So, yeah, you win 56 games. You make the conference finals. DeRozan himself had the best statistical season of his career. But ultimately, the Cavs were just a much better team than Toronto.
Yeah, exactly. 2016-17 was another good season for DeRozan and the Raptors, but also ended with a familiar roadblock. I mean, DeRozan for the second straight year, he averaged over 27 points per game, made the All-Star team, finished All-NBA third team, picked up some MVP votes for the first time in his career, set a career high with a 43-point performance in a February win against the Boston Celtics before hitting a game winner against the Knicks just 3 days later. Lowry also had an excellent season, 22.5 points, 7 assists per game, also made the All-Star team. The Raptors regressed a little bit in the win column during the regular season, down to only 51 wins. You take out Giannis and the Bucks in the first round in 6 games before matching up once again with LeBron and the Cavs in the second round. This time he didn't go down in 6 games, he got fucking swept, which is great.
Yeah, DeRozan was bad in game 1 in Cleveland and played maybe the worst playoff game of his career in game 2.
5 points on 2 of 11 shooting.
Yikes. Yeah, Raptors got smacked in both those games, and despite DeRozan going off for 37 in game 3, the Raptors got smacked again and eventually went down in 4 pretty easily to the Cavs. So a career year for DeRozan again, but still it's the Cavs just being that roadblock for you.
Yeah.
So that brings us to 2017-18, and oh boy, this was,
dear God.
Yeah, a very memorable year for the Raptors for multiple reasons. First of all, it looked like the year they could finally get past the Cavs. Mainly that was because this was just not the same Cavs team as the year prior. Of course, you lose Kyrie over the offseason, and it was very clear Isaiah Thomas was not a viable replacement, at least for Kyrie.
Yeah.
Cavs had their big midseason shakeup, struggled to a dysfunctional 50-win season, got the 4th seed in the East, and meanwhile, Toronto had their most successful regular season in franchise history.
Yeah, I mean, DeRozan had another excellent year, again made the All-Star team, picked up MVP votes, this time made All-NBA second team. Lowry was also an All-Star, and the Raptors at this point did a much better job of surrounding their stars with like a deep supporting cast. I mean, you had a couple vets and guys like Serge Ibaka and CJ Miles, and then honestly, so many talented youngsters who had just yet to fully break out. I mean, Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, Jakob Poeltl, OG Anunoby, Norman Powell. You put that team together right now, that's probably a playoff team, honestly.
Yeah, that's a very good team.
That's a really good team. And they are all just youngsters, like, just waiting to break out. Raptors won 59 games, a franchise record, and for the first time ever, went into the playoffs as the top seed in the Eastern Conference. Dispatched the Wizards in 6 in the first round, a little bit of revenge for getting swept by them a couple years prior, before once again, matching up with LeBron and the Cavs in the second round. Now, I think we've kind of Mandela affected this series a little bit, because I feel like if you ask a lot of people nowadays, like, oh, what was the vibe going into this series? Everyone would be like, oh, Toronto was massive favorites. You know, like the iconic LeBron Infinity War trailer would very much have you believe in this. They've got all the sound bites of like, you know, Toronto's the better team. They're going to win this series and whatnot. The reality is that at the time, opinion was pretty split down the middle. Like the ESPN experts still favored Cleveland, but it was a very slight majority. Like it was pretty close to being 50-50 between people picking the Cavs and people picking the Raptors. The one thing everyone agreed on though, this was the Raptors' best chance to finally knock off Cleveland. They were the #1 seed, had the better and deeper team on paper, hadn't just endured a season of dysfunction, and of course, we all know what happened.
They got swept absolutely embarrassingly. I mean, we've covered this series in a couple videos in the past, so we'll be brief. Dropped game 1 at home in overtime, and they were just unable to score at the end of regulation, had legit like 4 chances, and just couldn't get it done.
At point blank too, like DeRozan has the one that just rims out, Valanciunas tips it up on the rim, and this is a thing I love doing with like moments like this. Pick out a random person in the crowd and just look at them. Like the Raptors fans, like especially after Valanciunas misses the last tip, there's people who are like jumping up and down, like slamming their feet, just like, what the Like, how can we not get a shot to go in?
Yeah, and even in overtime, Fred VanVleet, his potential game winner was off. So you lose game one. You get smacked in game two. That's the iconic LeBronto game.
Of course, yeah.
You lost game three after LeBron just said, fuck it, I'm going to try some shit at the end of this game. Had that game-winning floater. I still just...
It's goofy as fuck.
Yeah, from the moment I watched it, I'm like, that's just not fair. It's just, he didn't know what the fuck he was doing. He was just like, I'll just throw this up there.
Why not?
And it went in. And then in game four, you get smacked again with DeRozan himself getting ejected for smacking Jordan Clarkson upside the head on a fast break. Again, this was supposed to be the year the Raptors could get over the hump, finally defeat the Cavaliers. You're the first seed. The Cavs are weak, and you have one of the most humiliating playoff series you'll ever see. For the Raptors as a franchise, probably the best thing that could have happened to them, but unfortunately, DeRozan wouldn't be part of that next chapter, as 2018 would be his last season in Toronto. In the 2018 offseason, DeRozan was traded along with Jakob Poeltl in a protected 2019 first to San Antonio for Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green. The trade was a massive risk for the Raptors because you're giving up DeRozan, who, along with Lowry, was your franchise player at the time, for Kawhi, who made it very clear he
did not want to be in Toronto.
Yeah, did not want to be there, wanted to play in LA. Apparently Masai Ujiri didn't consult with DeRozan before making the move, but also, I mean, DeRozan, for as good as he had been in Toronto, I mean, he had spent his whole career there up until this point, had developed, had improved as a player. He just came up short time and time in the playoffs, or at least when they needed him most in a series like this one against the Cavs, just couldn't quite get it done. So you understand why the Raptors made the move, and it worked out obviously perfect for them.
Yeah, it worked out great for them. I mean, ultimately, I feel like the Raptors after that series, they just were like, we don't want to build long-term.
Gotta shake something.
Yeah, we got to do something, right? And the opportunity to bring in Kawhi was there. Again, massive risk because, I mean, their chances to keep them at the time were seen as like slim, even if they did have an insanely successful season, which
even if
they
they
did.
won the title, maybe you won't keep them.
Yeah, exactly, right? But they decided they'd rather take that risk than move forward with DeRozan. So 2018-19, DeRozan's now in a new situation. He's in San Antonio. Had an okay year, honestly. You know, the Spurs, they still had LaMarcus, they still had Pop, they had plenty of the other pieces from a team that just 2 years prior in 2017 had won 61 games and won 47 games the year prior without Kawhi for most of the year. Like, this was still a pretty solid team around this time. And that was part of the reason the Spurs went with the Raptors package, is because they felt DeRozan could keep them competitive. And DeRozan had another productive year, averaged a little over 21 points. He missed out on the All-Star game and All-NBA honors, but he and LaMarcus formed a pretty solid duo. Spurs started a little bit slowly, but eventually won 48 games, secured the 7th seed in the West, matched up with the Denver Nuggets in the first round. Now, this was a 2-7 matchup, so I don't think many people were picking the Spurs to win this series, but also this was the Nuggets' first time in the playoffs with their core of Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, and meanwhile, they're facing a Spurs team with just a mountain of playoff experience, right? So, you know, maybe the Spurs can take a couple games off Denver. And my God, the Spurs give the Nuggets a run for their money in this one. I mean, they stole game one in Denver, split the next two with the Nuggets, so you're heading into game four, 2-1 lead, chance to take a stranglehold on the series. Instead, you get out to a big lead after the first quarter, but eventually you get crushed, and DeRozan himself gets ejected for throwing a ball at a ref late in the game. Got smashed again in game 5 before rebounding with a dominant game 6 win to force a winner-take-all game 7 in Denver. You fall behind by 13 at halftime, but you rally. You get the Nuggets lead down to 2, but you can't get any closer, and down 4 with 30 seconds left, DeRozan's layup is blocked by Torrey Craig. Denver wins 90-86. Spurs are out in the first round.
Yeah, tough way to go out for the Spurs, despite DeRozan still proving to be a very good player, but unfortunately, as we'll talk about, his time with the Spurs, like, just joined them at the wrong time. It was the end of the Spurs dynasty, or really the end of the Spurs being really competitive. The DeRozan-Aldridge duo was nice, but it wasn't actually going to do anything or really compete in a very good Western
It was
Conference.
a last-ditch effort to hold on to their previous success.
Yeah, but in 2019-20, the Spurs took a big step backward. DeRozan still had a solid statistical season. He averaged 22 points per game, but the Spurs as a team just weren't quite the same despite running it back with mostly the same roster.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, LaMarcus was still there, Derek White, Patty Mills, and Rudy Gay. Plus, you get back DeJounte Murray after he missed the entire 2019 season with a torn ACL. But despite all that, you crashed to a 27-36 record when the NBA suspended the season due to COVID. They were invited to the bubble, but despite going 5-3, they missed the play-in by 1 game, finishing behind both the Suns and the Grizzlies. And this ended one of the greatest playoff streaks in NBA history.
I think it is the longest, actually.
Yeah, I guess in sports history, honestly, is what I meant to say, what I should have said. First time missing the playoffs since 1997, and that was the year where they basically tanked because David Robinson broke his foot and missed almost the entire season. Of course, it led to them getting Tim Duncan, but
yeah, exactly.
An all-time streak for the Spurs ended this year.
Neither of us were alive at that point.
Fuck, you're right.
I mean, literally, all we had ever seen was the Spurs making the playoffs every single year of our lives. This was the first year that it didn't happen, and it took a fucking global pandemic to knock them out of the playoffs.
It went from we were born, we're old enough to buy a fucking beer.
Yeah.
That entire time passed before they missed the playoffs.
Some teams just have it all, honestly.
Right.
And 2020-21 was almost identical. Again, DeRozan scored well. He averaged about 21.5 points per game. DeJounte Murray and Derek White both took some nice steps forward, although White only played roughly half the season, but LaMarcus was not the same player anymore. And after only 21 games, he left the team and eventually reached a buyout with the Spurs. Without LaMarcus, the Spurs were just okay. Again, you know, they slightly beat their record from the prior season, went 33-39 in the COVID-shortened 2021 season. That was good enough for the 10th seed. They cracked the inaugural, you know, NBA play-in tournament as we know it in like the modern format. Played the Grizzlies tough on the road, even had the lead in the fourth quarter at one point after a Keldon Johnson 3, but the Grizzlies closed the game strong. They prevailed 100-96. DeRozan had a tough game, and with that loss, the Spurs missed out on the playoffs for the second straight season. First time they had missed the playoffs in consecutive years in franchise history, dating back to the ABA. And again, they just get Victor Wembanyama dropped in their lap, you know. They've had nothing but success their entire time in existence.
Gotta rant about that one more time.
Have a couple of years where they're bad, like every other team has to deal with it. It's like, here's a generational prospect for you. It's bullshit.
In that offseason, the Spurs, obviously, they're going nowhere. DeRozan looked elsewhere in free agency, and he ended up joining the Chicago Bulls on a 3-year, $85 million deal. This was actually a sign-and trade where the Bulls sent out Thad Young, a first-round pick, in 2 seconds to get DeRozan. So DeRozan's now on his 3rd team, joining the Bulls, and early opinions on this move, not the best. Weirdly enough, I don't remember this at all because I was kind of high on this Bulls team going into 2022 because I was like...
You saw something not a lot of other people did.
Yeah,
then.
Levine, DeRozan. I really liked Lonzo Ball, Vucevic. I was like, they kind of got some depth. But like you said, no one else really agreed with that take because in the annual NBA offseason survey that happens every year, you know, you poll a bunch of executives around the league. The Bulls signing DeRozan was voted as the worst move of the offseason. Yeah. I mean, the fit wasn't necessarily the problem on the team because, yeah, the Bulls had some defenders. They could use another scorer. But the problem was what the Bulls gave up and the contract they gave DeRozan. And mind you, I mean, this Bulls team was not really in contention the previous year. They were coming off a 30-win season in the COVID-shortened 2021 season. Hadn't made the playoffs since 2017 when they snuck in as the A seed.
Yeah.
So bringing in DeRozan wasn't really seen as the move to get you over the hump. But like I said, I was kind of high going on this team. And at least, you know, initially we'll talk about here soon, it was working.
It was working. I mean, Bleacher Report also hated this move. They voted their worst move of the offseason.
What do they know?
But also, I mean, Jake Fisher reported at the time that there was someone around the league that hoped DeRozan would be open to taking the mid-level exception, which was like right around $6 million back then.
Gotcha.
And so for the Bulls to send him $85 million and send out Thad Young and a first-round pick, like,
fair.
I could see why the execs didn't particularly like it. But no, you were right. I mean, DeRozan had arguably the best year of his career. Like, he and the Bulls came out of the gate on fire. He was putting up the best numbers of his life. Bulls were on top of the Eastern Conference. And the thing about DeRozan this season more than anything, dude was clutch as fuck. Like, he had so many, like, tough go-ahead jump shots and layups, like, late in games. And the two ones that everyone remembers, that ridiculous one-footed 3 to beat the Pacers in Indiana. And then the next night in Washington, a super contested corner 3 over 2 Wizards at the buzzer. So in back-to-back nights, a dude who is not known whatsoever as a three-point shooter hits 2 3-point buzzer beaters.
And to go along with the clutch play, he was super efficient in scoring like crazy. Pre-All-Star break, he was averaging 28 points on almost 52% shooting. And speaking of the All-Star game, DeRozan, he was back in it for the first time since 2018. And not only that, he was an All-Star starter. During February, he also had a streak of 6 straight 35-point games, broke a record owned by Michael Jordan previous to that. Eventually, he had a streak of 7 games where he scored 35 points on 50% shooting in every game and became the first player in NBA history to do so. Only guy who was close to that was Wilt with 6. I genuinely cannot believe that stat. That is one of the most insane stats in NBA history.
Yeah.
You know, everyone was kind of, or there was the Carson Brever thing we mentioned, like DeRozan's the oddball out of these all-time scorers. I mean, with a streak like that at least is some major credibility.
He's got something no one else on that list can claim,
That's
you know?
crazy. Not Wilt, not Luka, Jordan, Dame, KD, Braun,
yeah.
Kobe, Shaq, whoever.
DeMar DeRozan. Also picked up, I'm pretty sure he picked up like a couple Player of the Month awards, like a couple Player of the Week awards and whatnot. Like literally at the All-Star break, the Bulls were tied for the best record in the Eastern Conference, 38-21, tied with Miami. And DeRozan was a legit like MVP candidate at this time. And then the post-All-Star break happened.
Yeah.
Dear God, the Bulls fell apart. Like I went back, tried to figure out what happened. Bulls fans were saying that losing Lonzo and Caruso just really killed their defense because they had like, you know, this swarming, trapping defense, and losing both those guys was too much to overcome. But my goodness, they went 8-16 in their last 24 games, dropped from the 1st seed in late February to the 6th seed by the end of the season. That caused DeRozan to slip out of the MVP conversation. He did still pick up some votes, and he did make All-NBA second team, but in the playoffs, the Bulls match up with Giannis in Milwaukee in the first round. And even though they stole game 2 on the road thanks to DeRozan dropping 41, they lost game 3 at home by 30, lost game 4 by 24, and then lost game 5 back in Milwaukee by 16. So a team that with less than 2 months left in the year had the best record in the Eastern Conference was bounced very easily in the first round. And it's got to be such a disappointing year because DeRozan literally had the best statistical season of his career. I mean, career high in points, career high in shooting percentage up to that point, led the NBA in 2-pointers made, was an MVP candidate in late February, and it all fell apart in like 45 days.
Yeah, one of just the most insane collapses you'll ever see. And then in 2023, his second season with the Bulls, kind of like his second season with the Spurs. I mean, the Bulls just regressed. DeRozan individually was still great. I mean, he averaged 24.5 points per game, was an All-Star once again, finished 3rd in the inaugural Clutch Player of the Year award.
He's unlucky that award didn't exist a year prior because he would have won in a landslide.
Right, but the Bulls struggled the entire season. They were hovering around 500 with the All-Star break approaching, but lost 6 straight games going into the All-Star break. They rallied a little bit post All-Star break, but finished 40-42, only good enough for the 10th seed in the East. They did beat Toronto on the road in their first play-in game. That was the game. Was it DeRozan's daughter was like yelling at the free throws?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, absolutely legendary moment from her, but they fell to Miami in the second game, denying the Bulls a second straight trip to the playoffs. And then in 2024, same song and dance for DeRozan and the Bulls. DeRozan, again, really good individually, averaged 24 points per game, but the Bulls as a whole were just kind of a middling team. Levine only played 25 games due to injuries, and the Bulls only won 39 games. This time, that was good enough for the 9th seed. Again, you win your first play-in game, this time against the Hawks, but you fall to the Heat in your second play-in game. And that summer, it was obvious the Bulls and DeRozan kind of had no future together. It was announced DeRozan wouldn't return. Honestly, kind of eerie how similar his run with the Bulls went to his time with the Spurs. I mean, the Bulls had higher peaks, but it basically was the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, year one, you peak, right? You know, with you get in the playoffs, DeRozan has one of the best years of his career, and then you kind of just regress to a below average play-in team for the next couple years. It is really unfortunate that 22 season went off the rails because look, that Bulls team wasn't going to win the title. They weren't even going to win the East. But could they have won a first round series, then maybe given someone a scare in the second round?
Yeah, they could have been tough with that defense too. Yeah,
I mean, they were a fun team. They were on the rise, and you know, if Lonzo and Caruso don't get injured, you know, who knows? But also, people pointed out that the Bulls were kind of playing above their net rating. You know, they were outperforming it for the first part of the season, so maybe a regression was on the cards. But again, it's just kind of unfortunate. And with DeRozan again a free agent, he decided to sign with the Sacramento Kings on a 3-year, $74 million deal. Like when he joined the Bulls, this was technically a sign and trade with Chris Duarte, Raekwon Gray, and draft considerations heading to Chicago, and Harrison Barnes going to San Antonio. Nothing in the GM survey I could find about this being the worst move of the offseason. I couldn't find any articles about, like, you know, that summer's free agency claiming this was the worst move or anything. Although I did find an article from Yahoo on their worst free agency signings of the 24 offseason. They had OG Anunoby at 7th.
And that was 2 fucking years ago.
Yeah. And now he's probably like seen as like on a bargain contract, right? Given everything that's happened. So, it's funny to look back on stuff like that. But DeRozan was joining a Kings team that had made the playoffs in 23, regressed down to a play-in team in 24, covered this move back in 2024 when it happened. And in the comments, I think this is on like our predicting the season in 3 words or less video, something like that. Had a lot of people that were like in on this move. And we both were like, I got no idea what these people are seeing, because the Kings already had quite a bit of perimeter scoring. I mean, you had De'Aaron Fox, you had Malik Monk, Everton Herter was still on the roster. He's a great shooter. Like, you didn't really need offense. They were, I think, like a year or two removed from that 23 season where the best offense of all time, right? Like, they really didn't need another perimeter scorer to help them out, right?
And DeRozan's first season with the Kings, kind of like his last 2 in Chicago, individually impressive, could still score the basketball, but overall as a team, underwhelming. He averaged just over 22 points per game for the Kings, but again, they were just a 500 team. And after a 34-point loss to OKC on February 1st. 2 days later, the Kings sent De'Aaron Fox to the Spurs in a 3-team deal that returned Zach LaVine, Sidi Sissoko, 3 first-round picks, and 2 second-round picks. Of course, it was just so funny that DeRozan and LaVine
are back together again.
Right.
I was laughing my ass off when this trade was announced. I was like, the Kings really just built the Bulls West.
That's what everyone was saying.
Yes.
Yeah, like Sabonis is their Vucevic, a foreign big who, is good, but kind of can't play defense.
Yeah, exactly.
Like limited. You got LaVine and DeRozan, just overall a mid-team that, again, finishes 40 and 42, which was one of the records the Bulls had.
Yeah.
The 9th seed, which the Bulls kept getting the play-in. And despite DeRozan going for 33, the Kings got smacked at home. This was so embarrassing by a post-Luka trade Dallas Mavericks. In fact, they were outscored 44-19 in the second quarter with Klay Thompson turning back the clock, looking like 2016 Klay, going 4 for 4 from 3 in the quarter and scoring nearly as much as the entire Kings team did in the second.
I mean, bravo, Sacramento, honestly.
Even Klay, we said so many times, when he's cooking, he's cooking. Even old man Klay.
Old wash Klay, when he gets hot, he really gets hot, man. So, Sacramento misses the playoffs for the 2nd straight season. And this past year for DeRozan and the Kings, I mean, don't really need to go much into it. Just a complete disaster. Only won 22 games. For most of the season, they weren't actively tanking. Like, they had a 16-game losing streak in the middle of the season where they were playing their starters for the most part. They weren't doing, like, the Jazz strategy of just resting guys. Like, they were still playing their starters and just losing games.
Wasn't working.
Yeah, but this season was notable because it snapped a long-running streak for DeMar DeRozan. He averaged 18.5 points per game this season, which, if you've been keeping track, this snapped a streak of 12 consecutive seasons where he averaged at least 20 points per game, which is remarkable. He is tied for 15th in NBA history in terms of most 20 points per game seasons. He's got as many as Dame, Kyrie, Allen Iverson, Patrick Ewing, Wilt, and he's got more than Russ, Charles Barkley, Larry Bird, Moses Malone, and ultimately that's the thing with DeMar DeRozan. Say what you want about him, whether he was a true superstar in his prime, whether he always contributed to winning basketball, right? But if you just needed a guy who could score, especially from the mid-range, DeRozan was about as consistent as you could get.
And I think the thing is, he wasn't going to give you 60 on a random night like Dame or Russ or, Kyrie, those guys would.
His career high, I think, is the mid-40s, 46 maybe?
It was never going to, stuff the stat sheet, but then you look at all the 20-point per game seasons and you're like, damn, the dude is one of the greatest scorers of all time. I'm not taking him over those guys in terms of scoring the basketball, but the consistency was there in the mid-range, was just so dependent. He could get you a bucket nearly any time from that area. It does beg the question, though. And again, it's just not a thing players can do. Some players just cannot shoot from, the 3-point level, but
I've said,
if he could.
I've said before, this is just a belief I have. Every person in terms of sporting ability at all sports has an inbuilt cap that they just can't get past, right? I could do nothing but shoot basketballs for 10 hours a day, every day for the next 10 years. I will never be a better shooter of the basketball than Steph Curry.
Yes. Even if Steph Curry took all that time off.
Yeah, if Steph took all that time off, he would still be better than me. No matter what I do, I will never reach his level. But man, it does beg the question, what if DeRozan's 3 was just a little bit better? And it seemed like he was starting to turn the corner a little bit, around 2018. He got better at it as his career went on. In 2018, he averaged 31%, 40% on 3.5 attempts per game. Not particularly good, but it's not god awful, and he showed a willingness to shoot them. And then the next year for San Antonio, he's averaging half an attempt a game and shooting like 15% from three. So I don't know. DeRozan has said about, his time in San Antonio that he thought the team was better served by him, driving and kicking to better shooters because they had guys like, Patty Mills, Davis Bertans, really good three-point shooters. And to DeRozan's credit, he averaged a career high in assists that year. So, credit to him for that. But again, man, if he just had if he could shoot 34.5% from three, 35%, like what kind of player could he have been?
Damn near KD.
Maybe. I might be pushing it a little bit. Maybe a little bit.
Okay, KD with a lot less length.
Okay.
We'll say that. But recently we got the news DeRozan is signing with the Nuggets on a 1-year, $4 million deal. I mean, what do you think of this? I like it overall for him. I think it's going to be a good fit, at least on the offensive end, playing with Jokic. He's a guy that can create for them. They were kind of lacking that outside of Murray and Jokic. So overall, I like the move for DeRozan.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't help their defense, which is probably the Nuggets' biggest problem.
That's true.
Right? So it's not great from that perspective. But again, we'll talk about this in a video, later this week. The Nuggets don't have a lot of other options at this point. So, DeRozan on the cheap, you could do worse, right? And at the very least, he can still come in. He can give you some points. He can be really effective from the mid-range. So if you think he's going to be the missing piece to, carry you to a championship, I think you're kind of crazy, honestly. Like, he's not going to be that. But considering the position the Nuggets are in, I think it's fine.
Yeah, especially off the bench, that's just a perfect place for him because, Jokic goes out, Murray goes out. He can get you buckets in that role. Like, he can still give you 15, 16, maybe even like 18 points off the bench if he has the proper role on a team.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, he needs to average 18 points a game for 105 games in order to crack top 10 in scoring. It's going to be it's going to be difficult coming off the bench, and I think he's 37 now, so he'd have to hang on for probably another 2 seasons. If he could average 15 points off the bench for another 2 seasons, he could get there. Whether he gets there or not, I'm not sure. Gonna be keeping my eye on it. But I mean, still, if you had said when DeRozan was coming in the league, this guy, he's gonna have an actual 50-50 chance to be a top 10 scorer of all time.
That's crazy.
By the end of his career, people would have been like you were a maniac.
Even now, I can't believe it. Even now, it feels crazy.
Well, what did Carson say about it? That it was
deeply disturbing.
Deeply disturbing.
Yes,
there you go.
We'll co-sign that.
But yet here we are. And again, you can argue about DeRozan whether he's a true superstar or whatnot, but you got to give it up to the man. This dude's had one hell of a career.
Absolutely.
That's the video, guys. What do you think of DeMar DeRozan's career? I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving it a like, as it really does help us out. And while you're here, why not check out some of our videos as well? And don't forget to subscribe to Synthetic Sports.